This is the Intuitive Leadership Mastery Podcast. What would it take for you to double your profits and half your stress with your intuition? Learn how with your host, Michael Light.
Welcome back to the show, and today I'm talking with Raoul Davis, CEO branding expert at the Ascendant Group. And we talk about why intuition really needs to be as commonly used as spreadsheets, and how sports people use intuition and why that applies to leaders in business as well. And also look at how to use intuition when prospecting for clients, and some wisdom that Napoleon Hill had on that many years ago, and how you can feel other people's rhythms when you're making sales or working with staff, and how to establish rhythm with staff, and why it's important that a leader helps other people change, and what would it take to make them change in your organization. And we also look at trust and an imagination, and how you can create trust in your team, and talk a bit more in detail about branding and other ideas there. So enjoy the episode, and thanks for joining us on the podcast.
I mean, the way I see it is, right now, if a CEO said to you, "Oh, we don't use spreadsheets in our business, that's too newfangled and out there weird," you'd be like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Like, it's just a tool, Of course your staff are going to use spreadsheets." And I think intuition is going to be the same way in a year's time. If you were a CEO saying, "Hey, we don't use intuition in our business," you'd be like, "What are you talking about? Do you not want an edge on your competitors?" It's like, of course you use it, because it's just a tool and it works.
Do you find that people might be using it and just calling it something else?
I think people do use it. Not everyone. Some people are like, we only do decisions rationally. But yeah, people do gut. They have the gut feeling. The thing is, they don't have tools to make it easier to use. So right. Some of the stuff I do is here are a bunch of ways you can extend this. You can get more on it. You can use it in areas you may not have even considered using it in. So if you're investing in different projects or hiring, how can you hire quicker without having to go through hundreds of resumes or have your staff go through hundreds of resumes, for example? How can you tell if a client is going to be an asshole or a good client to have, and how much money you're going to make with them over the next year?
Yeah.
These are all things you can get from your intuition if you ask the right question.
I 100% agree with you.
So, but not everyone is doing that, I think some people do that, but not everyone. And also, even the people who do this, they don't always feel comfortable sharing it with their staff. Right? And just think how much more powerful someone's company.
I personally don't mind sharing it at all.
Well, that's good. That's probably why we're talking. But that makes that empowers the people who work in your team, right? If they can be like, "Hey, it's okay for all of us to use our intuition, and we can all use these, gifts that we have," we can build a much more powerful organization. And we can move quicker, because that's the other reason for this. You're probably aware that the world's changing a lot quicker these days than it used to 10 years ago. It's going nuts,
Yeah, it was funny because I actually had this group called the Center for Organizational Effectiveness kind of do an assessment on our team and our strengths. And so going into it, I was assuming that one of the things was going to come out was that we were innovative, but that was not what came out. What came up was that we improvise.
Mm.
And I think, and it actually ended up being like the biggest core value amongst our most successful team members. And I think when you're improvising, a lot of times you are layering in your intuition.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's how you can how to successfully improvise. I mean, that's what good business people do. It's also what, if someone's in the military, you don't think of the military as being intuitive, typically, or I don't. But they really are when they get into an actual battle, They're all like, let's follow the rules up until the moment they're in a battle and they're at war. And then it's the soldiers who are able to intuit that, hey, they're about to be attacked and they need to do something that survives.
Yeah. I mean, there's a principle that I've actually kind of led our team by called commander's intent. Basically, the commander sets the battle direction, but realizes that he's not always on the ground, so he has to trust his soldiers to be able to improvise and use their intuition and make the decisions that are the best real time.
Right. And that's why that actually was what the German army did in World War II, which is why they fought far above their numbers. They were much more effective as an army than you'd think from how many soldiers they had.
Right.
Because they would let the local commanders and the local soldiers, they could they knew what was happening on the ground. The generals were too far away, so they were okay. Yeah. And the same thing in business. You can't micromanage your whole team if you've got a whole bunch of people. And even if you've only got a few people, it's still silly to micromanage them, because why did you hire them if you weren't going to have them, make smart decisions?
Yeah, I totally agree.
So, cool. So your business is helping people out with publishing, or you do other things, or I wasn't quite sure what.
No, so what we do is CEO branding, and actually, this is funny because now I'm going to kind of give you a backstory, and you'll kind of see how intuition is played throughout the whole entire process.
Oh, right.
So when I was in undergrad, I, my freshman year, I partied. I'm sure you probably did too. Did you go to college?
I did go to college, yeah.
Yeah, so you remember your freshman year, you're around all your friends and, first time away from being from home. So I had a good time. End of my freshman year, I had this friend of mine who said, hey, Raoul, you should run for vice president of the campus activities board because you'll be able to throw all the parties on campus. So I go to the meeting, and instead of nominating me for VP, he nominates me for president. And he had brought in all these people to kind of come in and vote for me because he knew that the bylaws the organization had loopholes. So I accepted the nomination for president. I won. Everyone hated me within the group because I'm the president and I wasn't even in the group the year before. So at this point, I had to make a decision of, okay, am I going to be serious and learn some leadership skills, or am I going to go for this year with everyone hating me? Mm-hmm. So I had to kind of feel my way through, not ever having had any experience leading an organization on any level whatsoever, on how to kind of convince people not to quit, how to convince people to believe in me, and to kind of see things through the organization. So I surprised a lot of people, even the advisor of the organization, because she didn't have high hopes for me. And we had a pretty good year. So I had worked behind the scenes, and I thought that, doing the work would set me up to go into student government. I wanted to be the Secretary of Judicial Affairs for student government because I was going to go to law school at the time, this and that. So I run the election. I'm running against a member of a popular sorority, much less experience than I had, but she slaughtered me because why? Because she's a sorority. So fortunately, though, my reputation within at least the inner circle of student leaders was good enough that I got appointed to an administrative assistant position within student government. So I learned my lesson and ended up being a lot more visible on campus that year. So I didn't only do stuff, but I made sure I was much more visible. So this was kind of one of my first lessons in branding. So I decided to run for VP of External Affairs that next year, and then surprise, surprise, a football player decides he's going to run against me. So what I ended up doing was there was another person running for the similar position, VP of Internal Affairs. She was a member of the sorority that caused my defeat last time, and she was running unopposed. And I said to her, I said, Laura, let's be running mates. I will put your face all over campus. You don't have to spend any money. And, you'll get more popularity on campus. She loved that idea. All her sorority sisters voted for me, so I pulled off the upset.
So now you help CEOs do similar things with their brand.
Correct, yeah. I mean, so then that next year, I booked a speaker on campus, and what I said to the bureau we worked with, I said, I love what you guys do. Do you have any internships? They said no. And, and for some reason I said, can you give me one anyway? And, can I chat with the CEO? So I chatted with the CEO. I told her, look, I'll work on commission, and you guys aren't in the university circuit. I will help you get more established on the university circuit. So she agreed. I started calling my other friends at universities and student governments, and my big sophisticated approach was use me instead of some old guy you don't know to book your speakers. So started booking speakers at colleges across the country. Over the summer, I would do things like I would fly to Atlanta, visit every university in Atlanta, work my way all the way through Alabama, Mississippi, and to New Orleans. And no appointments, just go in, meet with the student activities director, try to find the student groups, and try to book speakers. So, and be mindful, I've never had sales training or any of this sort of stuff in my life. So did that for a few years. I actually became one of the top salespeople in the organization only while I was working 10 to 15 hours a week because no one else had even thought about the university circuit, and it was much easier than trying to book corporate gigs. So by 2004, I was in grad school at University of Delaware, and two of the clients from the bureau approached me. I had been working with them on a tour for about 6 months, and they said, hey, Raoul, why don't you start your own company? We'll become your first two clients. So I said, hey, why not? So I started a business then, 2004, and we started out just managing public speakers. And so the innovation I did in the space was normally either as a bureau, you were either like a bureau and you just book speakers by yourself. What I did was I kind of restructured the model and kind of treated the bureaus like a distributor. So I booked the clients directly, and then I also worked through the bureaus to also get them listed and booked as well. So I did that for a couple of years, worked with some cool entertainers, someone from the MTV's Real World, someone from The Apprentice, etc. And what I realized in 2006 was what determined how much they spoke was their popularity or their brand. So that's when we went into personal branding, just a matter of necessity to help them increase their speaking engagement. So we added securing book deals and PR into the mix at that time. So did that for 3 years. Noticed that there was a lot of talk now about personal branding. There were more firms talking about it. Peter Montoya put out a book on personal branding. And I thought, maybe we need to figure out how we can innovate or differentiate more. And we had some CEOs coming into the company as clients, and I liked working with them more than entertainers anyway because they're more sane, in my opinion. Believe it or not. So I decided for us to focus on this idea of CEO branding. And when I researched it, there was only one company in the space at all. So we basically ended up being the kind of second entry into it. And, the idea was you think about what Richard Branson and Magic Johnson and Martha Stewart have done in terms of leveraging their brand to help build for business. How do we bottle that up in a formula? So where we landed was you do it through PR, social media, book deals, securing awards. And starting it with a brand strategy that kind of aligns what the CEO's core strengths are with the company's. And instead of trying to get the company PR, because a lot of times it ends up just being seen as advertisement, by leveraging the CEO as a thought leader, you get the CEO on the CNBCs and all this sort of stuff, and they get to talk about the company anyway.
Right.
So that's what we've been doing the last 7 years. We are a member of the Forbes Agency Council for PR. We're a founding member, actually. We've won a number of awards in the space. We've expanded a bit globally. We have an office in Egypt now. We work mostly with mid-sized market CEOs, some retired athletes as well, and we've had several clients in China.
Wow, that's great. So you help them rebrand themselves so that they can be seen as a thought leader, represent their company better, and get media exposure.
Yeah, so how do you... So the three reasons you do CEO branding are, one, to grow the top line revenue for your company. It's just kind of a better mousetrap. Two, build what we call a portable brand. So if you think about like the Richard Bransons of the world, if you're seen successful in one area and known for it, people will assume your success in other areas. And the third reason is kind of a legacy building component, is to be able to impact the world at a different level. People get to become more familiar with the work you're doing, and then that inspires others to do it.
Cool. So you're making the next Richard Branson, really.
That's I want to make the next them, but on hopefully Richard Branson's level of popularity. Yes.
Wow. I'm seeing hundreds of people coming out of this.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Wow. Okay. So where does intuition fit into this?
Well, I mean, I think like most of it was intuition, because I never studied any of the stuff. So it was intuitive for me to ask the CEO to give me an internship, even though they don't have any. It was intuitive for me to kind of make up a sales pitch to my colleagues at other student governments and even think I could sell without having any sales background and being a psychology and political science major. It was intuition deciding to start the business and structuring it the way I did, and then over time figuring out what type of ideation needed to happen in the business to kind of allow it to continue, because it was kind of like every time there was a potential to get stagnant, trying to jump ahead of that. Because I'm a firm believer that if they say that if water isn't running, it becomes diseased. So you've got to have some type of continual flow, or that stagnation can kill you.
Wow, that's a good quote. Is that your quote, or is that someone else's?
It's something I read at some point. I can't remember where I got it from.
I'm sure I can find it. But that's a good... I'm just writing it down. It's, cool. So really, you just follow your intuition, you keep flowing, and that helps your business be more successful.
Yeah, you've got to be willing to read situations, feel your way through them, and kind of anticipate the next hurdle you're going to run into, or begin to see the signs of that hurdle, and be willing to move before that hurdle smacks you in the face.
That really sounds like a sporting analogy now.
A little bit, yeah. And I did make that one.
Yeah. But I mean, it's true for business too. If you're able to see the issues before they become problems, then you can just keep your business running much more smoothly and less stressfully.
Yeah, I mean, I think the single most accurate sports analogy to a CEO is really a American football quarterback. I mean, because you have to make you call a play in advance, but you have to read and make decisions real time. And you're reacting to things that are unpredictable. You may think the defense is going to do one thing, but they do something totally different, and you have to read the situation real time.
Mm-hmm. Right, because you can't control what your competition is getting up to, or even what your clients need and want.
Yeah, or what shifts happen in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, the myth that you could do all this logically and rationally and have a spreadsheet to figure everything out is just crazy, because there's too much information and it's all changing too quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what people can do, and I did find some benefit, as I matured, I did find some benefit in this, is that I think there is some benefit to having a broad structure and definition, but you have to give yourself a room to be able to maneuver all sorts of ways within it. But I do think there's some benefit to having a framework. I mean, one of the things that kind of anchors me is I read a lot of the book of Proverbs and the book of Psalms in the Bible, because the principles in there kind of help anchor me daily and allow me to kind of challenge myself to make sure I'm operating within the framework I said I wanted to operate within.
So what's have you got a passage from that you've read this week that helped you out somehow?
Well, I think so. One of my favorite ones is that there is this idea that there is a season for everything. There's a time to cry, a time to cheer, and it kind of goes on. I'll email it to you, but I love that, because I think what happens in our lives is that we are constantly moving through seasons, and we don't have complete control of them. And because just you have no controlling factor of when spring, summer, fall, and winter come in the real world. And I think it works the same way in our lives. I think the mistake people make is they all want to get to summer, but the reality is we will all face winters. And what you need to be willing to do is make each season of your life the best season. How can you have the best fall or the best winter or the best spring? And when it is summer, you better start building that harvest so that you can make it through the next fall and winter.
Makes sense. I must admit, I'm also thinking, hey, if it's winter in the East Coast, I'm just going to go to Thailand. Well, that's me. I'm a bit more whatever, location independent. So what about, are there any areas in your business, some of the areas I've used intuition in are hiring, because it's just, hard to tell who can be a good person just by looking at resumes. For me, I've got to get a feel for the person. I don't know if you have any story or experience with that. It sounds like.
Well, I think, so for me, it's kind of client prospecting. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I look at is the, I guess it goes back to Napoleon Hill's concept in the, what's the book? The Laws of Success, 15 Laws of Success, where he talks about this idea of having agreeable minds. And so if I find myself in a situation with a potential client where it seems like they just kind of have this wall up and they don't share openly, and they offer kind of a lot of pushback right away, a lot of times I will kind of back off of those situations and decide not to either pursue the type of opportunity, or if you do develop a proposal, it is literally twice the cost of what it would normally be because I am basically accounting for the pain and suffering.
Right. That makes sense. And that either makes them back off themselves or at least you're getting compensated.
Correct. And I think with most people, like, at some point, unless they're just completely irrational, you'll end up getting to a place of rhythm. But it's just a matter of it takes more time, therefore it costs more, and to get to that place of rhythm with some people than it does with others. And yeah, I think that's a whole nother concept. Is I think this idea of rhythm. I think life is a lot like dancing. I think that you end up learning to follow the rhythm in life. Like there's times where it feels like you are cutting against that, and sometimes people don't listen to that and they go through with things anyway. It ends up burning them big time. Mm-hmm. So when you kind of enter in that place where you feel like you're free flowing and you're in that rhythm, things come together much better.
What's an example of that you've seen? I totally get it. But,
so when I do brand strategies for clients, like, we will spend 4 to 6 hours with them, get the information, and there is some days where I can sit down and start developing that strategy, and I just don't have it. Like, maybe I was up too late the night before. Maybe I've got something else going on in my life. And if I try to just grind through that, it ends up producing really poor content. And I have sometimes just said to a client, you know what, we need an extra week on this because the last thing you want to do is produce something that isn't going to be your best. Mm-hmm. Whereas, sometimes it may be I need to go to a beach or, sometimes I'm just kind of in that rhythm and then I can just flow right through it. And what normally might take 20 hours takes 6.
So instead, if you listen to your what's going on and feel the rhythm, you know that, now's the time to rest versus now's the time I can just get this material done real easy. And not fight against that.
Yeah, and I think a really simple application that people can get of this is I think way too many people try to do complicated work late at night. If you have already worked for 9 or 10 hours and you're trying to do something that takes a lot of mental horsepower and you're kind of tired, you're being silly because it's going to take you 3x time to get through it. Mm-hmm. And if you just took your tail to bed and started on it the next morning, you blow through it way faster.
Mm-hmm. I mean, often I think that's very true. And often I get, if I go to sleep, thinking, oh, what will it take to get this thing done easy in the morning? I'll get inspiration in the morning.
Yeah.
Not only am I fresher, but I often have fresh ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is a great way to do things. What about you mentioned this like dancing. You talk about your own rhythm, but also there's other people's rhythms too. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that. When you bring people within the company, you've got to kind of get a sense for what's it going to take to establish rhythm with them. And, it's not always just going to be like a microwave, right? It's not you put it in this microwave for 60 seconds and boom, pop, it happens. You've got to understand what level of potential there is to establish rhythm and then begin to work your way through it. And I have found that a lot of times the best way to do that is to kind of have the softer conversations with people. Like, you really kind of get to understand what really drives them, what are their inspirations. And when you can kind of find the commonalities between what drives you and what drives them, and you begin focusing in that area, you develop that rhythm much faster. I think the big mistake a lot of people make is that they just treat everybody the same. And that just does not ever. And, you know, like, not to get too political, but I think the thing that hurts America right now is that as a country, we've lost our sense of empathy. Like, when you are able to demonstrate empathy with people, they're much more willing to listen to you and care about what you're saying. And you have a much easier time articulating and working through your differences at that point. I saw Joe Biden give the most interesting interview a couple months ago. He talked about how him and Strom Thurmond and Jesse Helms obviously had very different views of the world at one time, especially when Helms and Thurmond were segregationists. But over time, getting to know each other over the course of decades, they came to be really good friends. I mean, Biden gave one of them their eulogy, and Jesse Helms' children said to Biden, we don't agree with half of what you agree with politically, but we voted for you because we know you. We know your heart. We know that you care, that you want to do the right thing.
Makes sense. One of the things I learned in sales is that all things being equal, people will buy from someone they like, and all things not being equal, they still buy from people they like.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, yeah, same thing in politics or getting people to change. A lot of running a company is just convincing people that they, to make a successful change in what they do.
Yeah, that is correct.
And generally, by default, people don't like change.
Correct.
So that's quite a trick, getting them to embrace change. How do you do that in your company?
We're mentally wired to reject change, right?
Well, I think we get wired at school. That's where we're taught change is dangerous, maybe. But I think before we're like 3 years old, before we hit school.
Oh yeah, we don't.
Little kids love new stuff. They're curious.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. Yeah, you're right.
But once we get beyond that and we've gone through education, it's like, got to learn something new. That sounds a bit like might be a lot of work, might be dangerous, might be hard.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, what's your secret to getting people to embrace change?
I actually tend to want to show them that it's working first. So if I am going to ask the team to make some sort of change, I tend to model the change first, have some progress in it, and then walk them through it.
So you're kind of leading from the front there.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that, I know what the concept is, the objectionable mind. That's the word I was missing. Yeah, I mean, I think that you've got to be willing to kind of coax things in a way that you're removing the obvious objections that would typically come up. And you work people out of purely thinking with their analytical mind and beginning to work with their imagination.
Well, that is really one of the keys to a successful leader.
Yeah.
They can work with their own imagination, but even more importantly, they can help other people to imagine how things might be different if they hired their company, or how it might be different if we changed the system inside the company.
Correct. Yes.
So, and working with imagination is really, that is really dealing with your intuition and the magical side of things, because it's not physical.
Correct.
And that's basically what your whole business is built around brand strategy.
Yes.
I mean, brand is not something you can grab hold of. It's all intangible.
Yeah. We have to get them to buy into imagining that after we work with them, we're going to achieve some future state that doesn't exist yet.
You're a genius, then. I mean, that's really hard to do, right? You've got to convince a client that you're going to work with this thing in other people's minds that doesn't even exist yet, the brand.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we've had some success in convincing them because we've been willing to commit to things that I don't know of many other firms are willing to commit. So, for instance, we commit to a number of media placements. So if we're working with someone for 6 months, we might say we guarantee a minimum of 30 media placements. If we're doing Facebook, we may say we guarantee at least 15,000 more Facebook fans. So what I tried to do with the business was kind of look at why people hate the industry in general, and a lot of people hate PR.
They do.
Yeah. And I try to think, well, why do they hate it? And then I try to frame the business to overcome those objections so that what happens is that we are talking differently than the bad experiences you had in the past. And if you're doing a competitive bid, the competitors are not framing it the same way we are. The analogy I use is that, like when you go to a car dealer, you put down money, you expect to leave with a car. Like what most PR firms do, and most in this branding category in general, is you put down money, you might just get 2 wheels. You don't know. So we've tried to frame it like it is a product, like you're walking away with something more tangible at a minimum. You can wrap your arms around it.
Well, that sounds like a great way to help people understand what value you provide.
Right.
And it really occurs to me that a lot of sales is working with the imagination of the client so they can get where they could be in the future, and overcoming their own resistance to change, and also their fears about whether it's going to work or not.
Yeah, I think the 2 words I would use are trust and imagination. For those 2 things, you're good.
So we were talking about imagination. How do you create trust in other people?
Well, I mean, so trust is basically demonstrating to them that you have the capability to do what you say you're going to do. And then also you are, again, different from what their previous experiences have been. So you're overcoming the skepticism that they naturally have. I'll tell you, for instance, what I do not understand about people who make cold calls is, like, why in a million years would you ever call an entrepreneur and say, can I speak to the business owner? Like, if you haven't taken the time to find out what my name is, I'm not going to trust you. That is an automatic red flag.
Right. But I mean, the way to do a successful cold call is you do some research, and you not only find out their name, but you find out other points of connection, and what pains they have. You can find out. There's a lot of things you can find out before you phone someone these days.
Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can find out to help develop rapport, and then also you got to start the conversation in a way that's disarming. Like, if someone is picking up a call from a number that they're not familiar with these days, they pick up the phone ready to be combative.
Mm-hmm.
So you immediately have to disarm them.
How do you do that?
Well, I think it's just what you laid out. It's basically sharing things about the business. It could be having some other level of small talk. So it's going to be one of those two things or a combination of both.
And where does your gut feeling, your intuition come into that kind of conversation?
Oh, you're reading tone.
Mm.
Because when a person picks up a phone, you can kind of tell where they are right away. Are they rushed? Did you catch them at a good moment? And then you've got to flow through the rest of the conversation based on where their tone is heading.
Mm-hmm. So you're reading their energy, you're picking it up through their tone of voice, their
Correct.
speed of speaking, how engaged they seem.
Their tone is more important than what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How much more important?
Oh, I would say 3x.
Wow. So many people spend time on the phone and they're listening to the words. And what you're saying is really they need to be listening to the tone.
Yes.
And picking up the energy of the person.
Correct.
And then what do you do? If you're picking this info up, what are you doing with it?
Well, you're adjusting to how much time you're going to have in the conversation, and based on that, you lead with your points. So if you know that basically this conversation is going to end in like the next 2 minutes, then you need to go ahead and try to pull out your hook that is going to make them interested in either talking further in that moment or allowing you to get an email address so that you can follow up with them.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's almost like you're at a dance and you met someone and it's like, do you want the next dance? And they're like, their body language is just not interested. But you've got time for one dance and maybe you get their number to dance further later, or they become engaged in the dancing and they want to continue dancing.
Yeah.
But if you're not paying attention to that, then you're just going to strike out.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes you got a situation where, you danced with somebody and then you decide it was kind of a good moment, and like you said, you may get the number, or you may decide that you're going to go to the bar and then come back later because you left something positive with them, and the next time you communicate with them, they will remember that. And you didn't ask for the email, and you just decided you would say, you know what, I'm going to reach out to you later when we have time to talk more fully. I've appreciated the 3 minutes you were able to give me right now. Like if you get out ahead of that, that makes people feel like you get them.
Back to the empathy.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a shortage of empathy in the world right now.
Yeah, that is it. That is it.
We're running a deficit.
So you're saying the world? I thought that was just an American thing.
No, I think there's a shortage of empathy in most Western countries. Not all countries. I mean, I think there are countries. I mean, I'm in Thailand right now, and I'd say people are pretty empathetic and have time. It's sort of like if you take yourself back to the 1940s or 50s in America, where it was like the small town and people had time to say hello to people. Which we don't seem to do so much anymore. There's more of that happens in some countries. I certainly see it in Latin America more, and I'd I see it in Thailand.
Yeah, I think so. This actually makes me think of something different. So I think the other point related to empathy is being willing to understand how people's backgrounds guide their behavior. Mm-hmm. Like some people, initially are rude, not because they're even trying to be rude, but because it's just kind of wired in them from how they were raised. And if you can stand that initial layer of ugliness, and you're one of the 5% of people who can, you get rewarded big time. Mm-hmm. Like our one of our PR people, she 80% of my team cannot stand her because she is very short in her communication. Like she basically does not add a lot of color to her messages. She's very kind of bottom line oriented, but it took the time to understand why she's like that, what type of work experiences she has had, what type of family situation, and as a result, she opens up a lot more to me than probably anyone she's ever worked with before. Mm-hmm. So I think that empathy thing drives not to just like individual situations in the moment, but it drives to trying to understand who people are. And I think even about America, my biggest issue with people from other countries that criticize America is, yes, we're the most racist country in the world, but we're also the most tolerant. And we're the only country that has been brave enough to have this level of diversity. And of course, there's going to be issues with it. It's been 300 years. It'll probably take 300 more for it to be smoothed out. And can you imagine if China was even 15% diverse? They would go crazy. Like, and South Africa, when being 10% white, it went crazy. So like I think a lot of times we're just not patient and we're not thinking through the bigger picture and kind of why things are the way they are.
Well, and it's not just countries. I mean, just within the United States, if you take people from different parts of the U.S., if you take people from New York and people from Atlanta and, somewhere out west, they all have, everyone has different ways of interacting.
Yeah, we're like different countries pretty much.
Well, yeah, it's like 50 different countries all put together.
Yeah.
Which is sort of how it started, right? I mean, there were 13 different states and they all decided to get together.
Yeah.
But even now, you can still feel, I still feel that it is like almost a different country when you cross a state line. Or even just between different cities, even within the, different cities even within the same state have a different feel to them.
Well, I mean, James Carville, I think it was, famously said, in Pennsylvania, you have Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and then Alabama in the middle.
Okay. Well, that kind of makes sense. I was just trying to see Alabama being slid up, and fitted into Pennsylvania. But it's true, and being able to pick that up and be able to work, and be empathetic with different people just makes you much more powerful as a leader.
Yes. It makes people open up more. I run an anonymous political blog. I'll actually give it to you. Presidential Ticker. Mm-hmm. And I don't put my name on it because I don't want clients to know, political stuff I'm doing. And then also, because I'm behind the scenes, if I have like a comma splice or something, it doesn't matter. But I have Trump supporters, Clinton supporters, Sanders supporters, everybody on the page interacting with each other. And sometimes it gets ugly. Mm-hmm. But what I try to push people towards is understanding each other. So when someone makes a really ugly comment, I kind of ask them, well, why do you feel that way? And have you considered this perspective? And it doesn't matter which side we're on. I try to push people towards empathy. So I don't take a partisan stance. I just try to push people towards thinking of what's the other perspective.
Well, so you're helping people be empathetic themselves.
I'm trying. Yeah, it's kind of brutal though.
Why is it brutal to get people?
Because I think that this election has just made people callous in a way that I haven't seen in my lifetime before. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe we have to go really down in order to come back up. You know?
Yeah, I mean, but one thing I say about people who get really upset with Trump is I say, don't get mad with him that he just took the lid off of the garbage can. He kind of showed us where our country really is.
Yeah, it's a bit of a
and to your point, yeah, I mean, to your point, you've got to uncover it before you can deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no one's really wanted to deal with the garbage can. They just want to kick the garbage can into the future,
right.
You know?
Right.
So,
Exactly.
but that is helping other people express empathy for each other is a pretty big skill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to be able to be empathetic yourself, but helping others to be empathetic is another level on that.
Yeah, I once was working with a couple of young millionaire African American clients, and this guy from Tennessee just basically started talking about these niggers are going to lose their money and blah, 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 and just like nasty. And so I said, thank you for writing me. Here's some additional things to think about. They actually have worked very hard. And we went back and forth a couple times. And I even said to him in one of the emails, I said, I'll be praying for you. And then he emailed back and he was like, you know what, man, I'm sorry. You're talking about praying for me and I'm being a complete jerk. What happened was one of my friends got raped by two African American guys and they got off, and it's made me very bitter. And so he thanked me. We engaged a couple more times. And who knows, maybe I prevented him from one day committing an act of violence because he calmed down, So you don't ever know how what you do ends up impacting people.
Yeah, and how, what you pick up and how you say things can totally change how they interact and their energy. Yeah. How do you deal with that when you've got someone who's, maybe a little aggressive or confrontive? What do you do?
You gotta be willing to assume that they aren't pure evil. So that is the baseline. No, it really is. Like,
no, it makes sense.
Assume that they aren't like Charles Manson, right? Because if you end up finding yourself justifying why they're stupid, then you won't have a reason to engage with them. So I would rather find out what is driving them and then work from that place.
So realize that they are, they are also spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah, and we're just struggling with it in some sort of way, and we all struggle.
And then you can have more empathy for them, and that opens up more communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. So any other things on business intuition that you picked up and you...
Yeah, I think you also kind of nailed it a lot where you talked about kind of tapping into, that spiritual side of you. I happen to believe that the Big Bang didn't create itself. Some force had to set that in motion. And I think that if you are a person that's come to that conclusion, you owe it to yourself to spend a part of your life figuring out how to tap into that force, whatever you believe it to be.
So this can help your business to be more successful and easier to run.
Yeah, and I think that, whether it's Henry Ford or Napoleon Hill, I think you find examples of people who were willing to kind of do that, and you've been able to see the impact it's made for them. If you're, just think about Dr. King for a second. How could he deal with that level of anger all the time? It was nothing but his ability to tap into that spiritual side. Without it, he would have just been angry all the time.
Right. And he wasn't, or at least outwardly he didn't come across as angry. He was passionate, but he didn't take it personally.
Correct.
That's quite a skill.
Yeah.
Just imagine if you'd been around back then and you could have been his personal brand advisor.
He was one guy who what I tell a lot of people, it's funny. So when Colin Kaepernick was doing, his protest deal, I basically did a post on Facebook about something I thought he should change because, from a branding perspective, and people were like, oh, well, it's not about branding. And I said, what do you think Dr. King was doing when they had Rosa Parks sit on the bus like that? That was planned. They planned that for months. The reason they planned that was because they realized that people would think it was outrageous that you're going to take an elderly black woman and make her move. So that was strategy. Branding is about how you drive a narrative and perception. So there is strategy in those sort of things. The social causes that deploy the best strategies end up winning the game.
That's how do you get what the best strategies to promote whatever movement you have is, whether it's a political movement or it's a business movement? Because the best businesses really are, they're not just selling a service or product, they're helping create a movement.
So, so my mentor in branding is a guy named Chris Collins. He taught me this very simple concept. You have two choices. You can get branded or you can get labeled. Getting branded means that you're putting out a message that you want people to identify with, so you're influencing the narrative. Being labeled means that you just let people make up stuff about you. And if you go back to what Trump did, he labeled the hell out of Jeb Bush. When he called him low energy, he buried him. And the reason he buried him was because Jeb Bush had not built a brand that could withstand that, and he didn't know how to recover from being labeled. And then the thing that you've seen kind of in the general election is many times Trump's greatest strength has become his weakness. When he is branding himself correctly, he wins. When he allows himself to be labeled, he loses. It really boils down to that, and you can study the trend lines with the polls. It's very simple. When he says something stupid or some story comes out about him, he's down. When that doesn't happen, he goes back up. It really is that simple with branding.
So the key to branding your business and yourself is that you get your story out and are clear about who you are instead of being labeled by others.
And you find the people who are most likely to receive it.
Mm-hmm. So really, you're polarizing the market. You know, some people are going to like the authentic you, and other people aren't, and that's okay. And that's better than.
Well, yeah, I mean, so some people will like it, and then what happens is when most people start liking it and they start talking about it, other people catch on as they piggyback on.
Mm-hmm.
So what Steve Jobs understood was that, and you know, like when he was having this debate with Woz about having an open system versus having a closed system, was he wanted to have a closed system because he wanted to have something that was unique in the marketplace, and he felt like he could drive something in the marketplace that a small group of rebellious people would catch on to because it's different from everything else out there. And then that small group of people would start sharing it with others. And that's exactly the way it played out.
Mm-hmm. So he had a clear brand. It was clear, and by brand, people knew what he stood for. Is that what a brand is?
I think what was kind of interesting about him was I don't know if people necessarily knew what he stood for. I think what they knew was that he was creating something that was different. And the people who levitated to liking things that were different just began to identify with that company and with his brand.
Mm-hmm.
So he tapped into an emotional chord that was very powerful.
Right. He had a very strong... I remember that ad that they did in 1984. You know, the famous one.
Hello?
There. Yeah, you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, that famous ad they did Apple did in 1984.
Yeah, that ad was not for the masses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that ad was not for the masses. It was for a small group of people to latch onto and then to spread it to other people.
It was for the people who believed in creating something different.
You know, when did you ever watch Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert when they were on back to back?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep, I did.
So, what the two of them what the two of them were able to put together in terms of being able to infuse comedy and news and really kind of connect with people emotionally. I mean, they basically accomplished, and I was one of the people. There are a lot of people who they got their news from the two of them. And it was because of the level of candor that they both offered and infusing it with humor. And so, and the fact that they were doing something very different. It was out of the box of the Matrix, right? And I think that, you know, sometimes what intuition drives down to is it's basically, how do you escape out of the Matrix?
So, yeah, how do you use intuition to escape from the Matrix?
Yeah, I mean, so like, you know, like if you think of NASCAR, all the cars are very high performing. The thing that's different about them is the driver.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to realize that it is your individual kind of talent and thought that is the most unique thing. And everything kind of gets birthed out of that. So you can't always just say you're going to follow some sort of model, because if you follow the model, then you're just following conventional wisdom. And guess what? Conventional wisdom is usually wrong. Otherwise, everyone who followed it would be pretty darn successful.
Mm-hmm. So what you can have a model, but you need to use your intuition to adjust the model to fit what's going on with the other people.
Yeah, and I think like if I were you, but maybe the biggest point I would make about intuition is it's the only thing that drives differentiation.
Tell me,
because like,
tell me more.
If people, yeah, I mean, so how do people usually come up with all these ideas? It's because something usually hits them. They don't even know how it hit them, and they ended up just deciding to go with the flow and bring it to life.
Mm-hmm. So that's a way to have more creativity in your company and also have it flow better.
Yeah. I mean, it is. Your intuition is how you gain your competitive advantage. Because if you just see, like 100 years ago, you could just rely on the strength of your product or your service. But in today's world, technology just grows so quickly and innovations happen so often that you cannot just rely on a product. Mm-hmm. If you let that be the differentiator by itself, you're gonna get beat by your competitor at some point. It's inevitable. The world has just changed too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they say that the number of inventions we had in the last 100 years, we in the first 14 years of this century, we've had as many inventions as we did in the 100 years of the last century.
Yeah, and then guess what? Eventually we'll move to a point where 7 years equates to that 100.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's just getting faster and faster. And you just can't. The only way to keep up is to use your intuition to be able to navigate through it.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it's sort of like 100 years ago we were dancing in slow motion and you could plan things out a bit better ahead of time. But now now we're dancing in real time. And you if you don't want to step on your partner's toes, you've just got to follow the energy.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with and this last thing I'll let you go is with Trump's slogan of "Make America Great Again." Is I tend to say more so let American politics be great again, because there used to be a time where more empathy was involved. But the issue of him saying "Make America Great Again" is that the jobs are never coming back. A lot of them, they just can't come back because structurally, with robotics and AI and some of the other things that have gone on, we're just getting more efficient. So the workforce has to be retrained, and people have to understand, they have to be able to learn how to tap into their intuition, because it's be retrain up in your intuition and learning how to build your personal brand that is going to be what's successful in this kind of next workforce revolution we're going through. The millennials, I think, are positioned fine for it. I'm more so concerned about the Gen Xers and the baby boomers.
Mm-hmm. Right, because they may not be quite as nimble on their feet.
Right. Yep.
And there's a lot of change happening in the workplace. I mean, there's someone I know, Taylor Pearson, he wrote a book called The End of Jobs, which talks a bit about this change, that traditional jobs, a lot of them are going away. And really the only way to have security is to have your own business.
Yeah, I mean, that's the conversation that needs to be had, but it's just not a popular conversation for people to engage in. There's an episode on South Park called Member Berries, and it's about these little berries that they basically keep talking about the good old days. And the symbolism in it to me was that a lot of times with the baby boomers and the Xers, they get just very stuck on how things used to be, and they wanted to go back that way. But we don't have a time machine. Sorry.
Or we are all in one big time machine, but it's set to go forward.
Yeah, it only goes forward, correct.
Doesn't go back. Yeah.
That is correct.
Cool. Well, it's been great talking with you, Raoul.
I hope
This was very useful.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you. I don't know whether the sound seems to be going in and out a bit.
I just said I hope it's helpful, and forward to touch base with me when the book's complete, and let's see if we can figure out a way to work together and approach some traditional publishers if you're interested in it.
Yeah, I'm happy to share the book with you, as it comes out. I'd love to get your feedback on it. I think you might find it an interesting read. Maybe there's some way, and you can read some of the chapters that are out in that Facebook group already.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some. We met for a reason, and I'm sure there's some way. We're going to help each other out in the future. So,
Absolutely.
I can tell you do really cool stuff. And
all right, I appreciate it, friend. Thanks so much.
Hey, have a great rest of your Thursday, man.
All right, you too.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye.
Get strategies and show notes at intuitiveleadershipmastery.com. What would it take to see you here next time on the Intuitive Leadership Mastery Podcast?